look at your onboarding. How many steps is it? How can you get rid of a step? If I were to characterize like all of Clerk's lifetime, like that's what we've been doing is just how do we take steps away? And we pitched Sequoia early on in the seed. And I actually really liked the feedback. They came back and said, Stripe took this many week process and turned it into hours. And Twilio did the same thing, right? And like, we just don't know if taking hours, which is what kind of Auth was at, taking it down to minutes, if people are really going to care. And that was kind of what they relayed when they passed. And we didn't know either. And I really appreciated that feedback because it was like you thought about it, right? But we've always had this belief that like, if we just take the onboarding steps and we just try to remove steps one by one, will just be the fastest way to set things up. And developers are just like ruthless about how efficient can I be. That process just made the onboarding that much easier. And that's ultimately where things started to pull.
Welcome to The Peel. I'm your host, Turner Novak, founder of Banana Capital. Today's guest is Colin Sidoti, co-founder and CEO of Clerk.
Developer tools for authentication, sign up, sign in, user profile, and you can just drop them on your app and they'll work.
I love this conversation because Colin is currently in the arena building Clerk. We hit on three main themes. The first being authentication and user management.
Stripe needs it to be able to do billing. Your CRM needs it to be able to keep track of accounts. Your marketing tools need it and analytics tools need it. But if someone's selling like bespoke plans, which almost everyone does, the process of turning things on is actually really hard. It's always changing. We've had crypto, we've had passkeys, and today it's agent auth. How are we going to let agents sign in for humans?
Second, we talk lessons raising multiple hard seed extensions in the early days, including a recap before the A and the demo that got A16Z to invest.
Why don't you email all those associates and say, hey, is there one fund that you'd recommend we talk to? Martine stops me at like the first hit point. He's like, holy shit. It's just partner alignment. That's the thing that matters most. And so I'm like DMing Guillermo, like, hey, I'm like at a bar with Reid. Can you help me? He then texts Reid while I'm sitting next to him.
Third, we talk all things AI and MCP.
Are you seeing any interesting data with how agents interact with Clerk?
They all try to steal free AI credits.
We also talk founding a company with his brother, building a compound startup, why components are the new APIs, and what he learned about audacious goals from John Collison at Stripe.
But you're never going to get like Amazon, right? And he was like, why not?
Before we jump in, a quick thank you to Reid Christian at CRV, Paul Klein at Browserbase, and Joseph Nelson at Roboflow for helping me brainstorm topics for Colin. A reminder, I publish new episodes of The Peel every week, exploring the world's greatest startup stories just like this one. Tune in next week for the first ever returning guest of the show, Dan Lawrence at ChainGuard. Now, let's talk to Colin.
Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think this will be fun. We had like an interesting, I guess, way we connected on this with prior guest of the show. You tweeted something about a clip that we posted, which I think you said was like your most viral tweet ever.
I think it was, yeah. And now I'm on the show, so I guess a successful tweet.
Yeah. So real quick for people who don't know, what is Clerk?
So Clerk is developer tools for authentication is the easiest way to think about it. We make React components like sign up, sign in, user profile, and you can just drop them on your app and they'll work. And then we also help with kind of the B2B side of onboarding. So tell us what your team name is, invite your teammates, and set their role and permissions. And so we help app developers build those parts of their application.
And this is kind of a thing that everyone needs to do, but it's sort of always been something that you just kind of hack together, sort of like historically.
In a sense, yeah. I mean, there's always been, I think like depending on your stack, there's always been like Rails had Devise and Node for a long time was Passport. And I think a big way like Clerk found our footing was Auth for React. And so even the way I just pitched it there was like the sign-in component, sign-up component, user profile component.
That's Clerk.
That's Clerk.
So I think an interesting question that'll open up some other angles. What does Clerk mean? Like, why did you pick that name?
Yeah. So despite how I just pitched it, I guess Clerk has a much like broader vision. And I think the core insight, so first of all, my brother and I founded it. And I think the core insight we had back in 2019 was if you look at any software companies like code around their user object, so not just the sign in stuff, but like after someone signed in, what are you doing with the user data? You're normally syncing it and sending it to like a standard set of people. So like Stripe needs it to be able to do billing, and your CRM needs it to be able to keep track of accounts, and your marketing tools need it, and analytics tools need it. And the list kind of goes on. And that piece of or block of code is like duplicated across every startup in the world. And so we basically approach the problem as like, can we do auth in a way where one day we'll be able to add a billing service, add a CRM service, add an analytics service? And now we're at the point where
You're kind of doing that, right?
Doing that, yes. Yeah. So depending on when this launches, right? Like billing will either be out or in private beta, but we actually got Stripe to invest in our Series B, and we've got a good partnership there where Clerk's going to launch a billing feature, and it'll use Stripe payments, but it should be, the easiest DX to set up billing for your application.
So does it just copy and paste some code and we're good to go? Is it that easy?
It really, that's the intent. We're adding a pricing table component. If you think about it, we already have the real estate that billing normally lives in. Like it's normally in your user profile or your organization profile is where you'd go to like change your plan.
Like as a customer or user of software.
Exactly. Yeah. So like on GitHub, what plan am I on? You go to your user profile and you go to the billing tab. And so we already offer people the user profile, and they go and they set their 2FA there, they change their profile image, whatever, and we're just adding a billing tab. So we already have that real estate, and we have to add kind of a pricing table, which is like the entry point to first subscribing to a plan.
Talking about tweets, you tweeted something about compound startups, which is basically there's a lot of different things that you do. I think some people say you should do one thing that's super simple. Some people say you should do a bunch of different things. How do you think about that with Clerk?
I think we should do a lot of things. So to me, the person who coined this phrase is
Parker Conrad.
Ripley. I failed to remember his name for a second there.
He's also in the news cycle right now with some other crazy stuff.
Maybe jump to that. But so I think for identity in particular, building a compound startup makes a lot of sense because Rippling has employee identity, and they start with payroll, and they're able to add like applicant tracking and benefits and IT and just like product after product that kind of surrounds the employee identity. Clerk is very much the same way, right? We do sign up, so we have customer identity, and like Stripe billing, like you don't just charge, you charge a user. And for email, you don't just send emails, you email your users. And so all of these things are very strongly coupled to identity. And that's why we think we can improve the DX around them and the UX, right? And this is a big piece that Rippling talks about. Is one of their big advantages is that they get to kind of have a common through line of user experience through all of these different services. And for Clerk, it's the same way, both dashboard side for people administering it, but also front end side. Like if you give us customization variables to tweak user profile and sign in, those will also apply to billing. So we get to provide a consistent UX to your users.
Yeah. So I think another maybe lesson that you've learned is just the power of audacious goals.
Yeah.
When did you kind of first realize that, that's a good thing to have?
I mean, we realized it early on. I think it was very much in the 2019 pitch deck of this 2-act thing of you get user identity first. And then the thing I just said about you don't just charge, you charge users. You don't just email, you email users. That was literally a slide in the 2019 deck that we used with South Park Commons. So it's really always been there. I think like we've seen Auth as just a bigger opportunity if you execute it right from the start. And I think that's what made us think we could do an actual venture business here.
I think you mentioned one time you were talking to John Collison at Stripe.
Yes.
And what's the story there?
So first of all, I met Stripe like 2011. I don't think they had launched yet. Like I was in a beta and got introduced to John, and I was getting dinner with him. I tell myself that he wasn't recruiting me. He probably wasn't, but it would be a really big mistake if he was financially for me. But
so he was just like a friendly, just I'm gonna get dinner with this guy.
Yeah. So this gem of a human, his name's Dara Buckley, was the first employee at Stripe, and I think they're like mates from Ireland is the story. And I gotten introduced to him, and he showed me Stripe for the first time. And then John was at my college to do just a like guest lecture thing, and I got dinner with him. And it was still super early, and we were talking about just like payment space, and pretty sure he was giving me the spiel about like there's only X on ecom so far, and it's just every year it's going to get more and more, and it's endlessly big, and we're going to take over all payments. And I had this gut reaction of like, yeah, but you're never going to get like Amazon, right? And he was like, why not? Just like pure deadpan, completely serious. Like, why not? And I just like, that's the one thing that sticks with me from that entire dinner. And I think for one, they went and they did it, right? Like it took them 10 years, but Amazon now uses Stripe. I think they first got in there by way of acquisition and so on, but like they're now a very big user of Stripe. And to just see how quickly things can compound, I think it is just like very inspiring. And yeah, I feel like I've adopted a lot of that in Clerk, where we get the same kind of comments like this XYZ massive enterprise isn't going to switch to Clerk. And it's just like, maybe not today.
Yeah.
But
5 years, 10 years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of new features you can add. A lot can change over that time.
And I think the way technology has evolved, or at least like developer tools have evolved, is they're now more trusted to be experts. And so if you look at even just the evolution of Stripe, they like famously started 7 lines of code for the charges API. Nowadays, most people use checkout. And if you think of like how much more you're seeding the whole UI to Stripe. And the idea is that Stripe can build a better payments UI than I can. And Clerk is very much the same way. Like we think we could build a better sign up, sign in, and then all of these areas that we expand into. And we expect that over time, more enterprises are going to actively seek that out. It's going to be less of this, oh, I want to outsource Auth, but like we do this weird thing in our application, like, can you support it? It'll be more like, I want to switch to Clerk for Auth, and I want to switch to the Clerk way. Right? And that's really what we're after and how we approach it.
So then how I think you've mentioned to me before in the past that you're very opinionated on like, we don't build any custom like features or changes to people. It's just, we are opinionated and you will either use us or you won't. Why do you do that? Because in theory, you might lose some customers because of that.
Yeah. I mean, so we definitely do lose customers. I think it's a little bit of just speed, right? Like right now, what's more transformational for Clerk's business? Is it getting a big Auth enterprise, or is it, $100 million in payment volume through the billing product? Like we have limited resources. And so right now we'd rather put those resources to something that like expands everyone's perception of Clerk, right? Like I'm still pitching it as Auth. But if, we want to be like unshackled by that $6.5 billion ceiling of Auth 0, which is what they sold for. And we think we can go much bigger.
So what does the product suite kind of consist of today?
It's primarily user management. So sign up, sign in, user profile.
So this is if I'm creating a product, I need a way to like create accounts for people. I need a way for them to log in.
Yep.
Okay.
Then there's the B2B SaaS SaaS side. We call it the B2B SaaS suite, but it's organization management. So B2B customer comes in, they tell you what organization they're part of, and then they like invite their teams. They might set up SAML for them. So that's the B2B SaaS suite. Oh, they set roles and permissions and things like that.
Yep.
And then we have, I would say, like half a product right now on administration. And so we have a feature called user impersonation. And so we have a lot of like companies support teams when they get a ticket in and they, customers saying they're seeing something, they can go sign in as that user and like see it themselves. And so that's our third product. But yeah, all of that, I think people still see as authentication. And so billing is really going to be the first that's like, oh, wow, this is a bigger entity.
How else are you thinking then about potential other things you can do? You just talked about we want to prove that we're more than just Auth. Like what else could this consist of?
I really like CRM. And I think the idea is like, if you go to a big software company that has like account execs and salespeople and a deal desk, like it's normally this operation that runs in, HubSpot, Salesforce, and there's this big disconnect between the software they're using and like the actual source of truth of customer data, which is like the application. And so
how's that?
It's like you'll have a sales team, they'll sell a thing, and then they'll hand it off to a deal desk, and then the deal desk will go work with like the engineering team to go turn on that customer with all the right like settings
based on what they bought.
And so there's this like it's always built in house. It's usually hacky, like different degrees of sophistication depending on the company. But if someone's selling like bespoke plans, which almost everyone does in B2B SaaS world, the process of turning things on is actually really hard. And so I really like CRM because, it's not so much about like the crud of CRM of like, taking the notes from the call today. It's more about like after the thing is sold, since Clerk does authentication and we're doing more and more of authorization with both, who are you in your organization? What role do you have and what permissions come with it? But then we're also entering it more with billing where what plan are you on and what things come with that plan. Like we'll get to this world of the sales team kind of able to work in Clerk tooling and actually, enable those features directly for that customer in a very clean UI. And it's all kind of connected. I think there's just so much manual in that today. And it's all hidden because, these are enterprise deals or massive contracts. You can pay to have people manually doing it. But we think that there's just an opportunity to actually give a singular interface and in a way that like CRMs haven't been able to do it. And then of course we'll also have to do the like classic CRM functionality. But we see that as maybe slightly easier. Naively. I'm sure I'm going to like learn that lesson 3 years from now. Like, oh, this is a horrible idea to get into this.
In the face.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of say it back to make sure I get it. It's so currently today when a deal closes, there's just a lot of like custom work that just needs to get done to get something live versus what you think you'll be able to do with Clerk is literally like, I'm the salesperson. I close the deal and I just say, this company has these features and I click the button and it's just live in the product for the customer already.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
There's no like enablement phase is sometimes what salespeople will call it. Like, oh yeah, I just sent this over to the deal desk to get enabled. And
interesting.
And
okay.
It's just like they throw these words at you and you're just like, is it like, can you just turn it on, please? Like,
yeah.
And so that's what we want to enable. Yeah.
Okay. Or authentication, it's like one of those things that sounds extremely boring, like extremely.
It is.
Just,
yes.
I'm impressed people that are still listening
No one
to
should
this.
want to do it themselves,
Yeah.
right? Like
the people listening to this
hard
podcast
and boring.
They're like, oh man, they must really be interested in authentication. So like, what does good and bad authentication just kind of look like from your perspective if somebody's like really in the weeds with it?
I think the main thing you need to remember with Auth is that it's changing all the time. And so like just in our lifetimes, I'd say like started with just like username, password, and then we added email. And when we added email, we had to verify email, and we had to do like a forgot password. And then sign in with Google came out, and sign in with Facebook came out. And then Facebook had that like Cambridge Analytica thing, and like sign in with Facebook is off, right?
I forgot about that.
I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. I don't know.
That's crazy, actually.
But like there's just been all of these changes. And for a while it was like we're all gonna have wallets and we're all going to have passkeys. And passkeys, I think they're still kind of growing in adoption, but people are a little more tepid about passkeys going to be the change. And so it's always changing. And even just in Clerk's lifetime now, we've had crypto, we've had passkeys, and today it's agent auth. Like, how are we going to let agents sign in for humans? And so like it is boring. I think like the actual question of like what is best right now, like the Clerk defaults are you have sign in with email and password, and then we have sign in with Google. If you go to sign in with email after you sign in with Google and you haven't set a password, then we'll send you an email with a 6-digit code so you can sign in that way. And yeah, for like password managers, you still want to have passwords there. Most people are using Google, so we're at like 65% now. And so that's really like you have to have it, or you're just killing your conversion for no reason.
Because people just expect they'll be just use their Gmail account to sign up.
Yep. That's it, 65%. When we started, it was like 45% for our first kind of 6 months of growth, and over time, it's just taken more and more. But yeah, I think then there's 2FA, and there's the YubiKeys, and there's the TOTP. There's just like all these elements. You can't just like take a password. Before you take the password, you have to check, have I been pwned, to see if it's been breached before. There's just like this endless array of things. I wouldn't even say it's hard. I think boring is good. You just like want to follow the best practice. It's undifferentiated. And so it's like kind of right to just outsource.
Yeah. It sounds like the perfect sort of category or product opportunity or market to make a company like Clerk around, because it's one of those things like no one wants to do themselves. It's really boring. Like no one on the team is going to sign up of like, I'll spend 3 months doing this. But it's like, you kind of need to do it. And it's like always changing. So it's better to just like have outsourced to expert shop that has like 100 engineers. I don't know, like maybe not 100 people yet, but maybe one day.
Yeah.
Massive team that's just constantly, giving you best in class.
I think that's the pitch. And a lot of people, when they do still going to do it in-house, which is normally like with an open source tool, they'll typically cut some corner. And I think what they don't realize is, that corner is cutting a reasonable amount of conversion. And like ultimately, Clerk is faster to set up than open source tools today. And that was I think that was a thing that we had to accomplish to make Clerk grow. But to do it, it's like, well, we have to have user storage. We have to have an email provider baked in. We have to have like basically demo credentials for sign in with Google. We have to have I been pwned hooked up for you? Like there's all these things that we have to do to be able to make it like truly faster than what you would do yourself. And so, yeah, like I think you end up with both a faster setup getting Auth going and just a more complete, polished, higher converting setup out of the box.
Yeah. So it sounds like a reason to use a product like Clerk it's like you have an opinionated way of doing something that the customer can choose whether your way is the best way to do it, or they could use like an open source tool that maybe different way of doing it. But your pitch with Clerk is basically like, we spent a lot of time thinking about this. We just think this is the right way to do it.
It's really similar to Stripe checkout, where like if you look at the last couple of years of Stripe announcements, it feels so focused on, and like Stripe checkout now converts 5%, 11% better. And I think when you get into that mindset of like not just functionality, but am I really myself going to think about truly streamlining this as much as possible? Like, no. And Clerk does have a huge team that's just thinking about it all the time. Why push that friction on my customers when this is here and it's affordable, right? Like we go along, try really hard to make sure that everyone can use Clerk.
So then how did you initially come up with the idea and start doing this?
Yeah, so I don't get the privilege of calling myself a serial entrepreneur because like they all failed, right? That seems to be a thing. You're not a second time founder until you have one that partially works.
So, but you were constantly just trying things.
I was constantly trying things. And so I graduated college like 2014. But even while I was in college, I was doing startups, and then we started Clerk 2019. So there was like that whole time I was doing startups and just like surviving.
So like they weren't even going good enough to say that we had built a startup. It was like we were trying things.
No, they had gone good enough. Like one of them, they were going good enough that I was able to sustain myself without ever like picking up a job, right?
Oh yeah, that's fair then. So then you could say the serial. You're an entrepreneur. You're constantly trying to find ideas.
I would think, but the number of fundraising conversations I go into where it's like, you're a first time founder. Okay, I'll take it. Whatever.
Those are fundraising conversations with like VCs. The thing like with VCs, it'll be, someone's got this business that's doing 500 million in revenue and like, it's like a CPG brand that does 100 million in revenue. It's like, it's a lifestyle business. It's like, dude, that guy's business does more in revenue than profit than like revenue of all your entire portfolio.
The bar is high.
You call it a lifestyle business, but it's like, it's not easy.
Yep.
But
the bar is high. But anyway, suffice to say, I was building a lot of things. And every time you build something, you need to do auth. And so I had this. So the other thing about the past startups, like I kind of had this intuition that I'm not good at the business stuff. And so I'm going to be the technical founder. I know how to code. I'll find good business people and they'll handle
the business.
Well, they'll handle that side, right?
Yeah.
And so the last one kind of fizzled out and I wanted to do something else. And I was like, you know what, this time, like I'm going to do the business side and all I know is developers. So I picked a problem that I kind of hated. I had this feeling of, Stripe is easy to set up and Auth0 is hard to set up. Like I can just do Auth easier. And I got lucky with Braden, my brother / co-founder. Like he was kind of looking at new jobs at the time and he was at an agency, like We Build Apps agency. And so he had spun up tons of apps where he also faced this problem of like just the 0 to 1, all the stuff you need to set up. And so it resonated with him and we kind of just built a proof of concept. This is January 2019 and spent a couple months on it, like 2 months on it. And then we did a little fundraising thing here in San Francisco. Went to South Park Commons and they gave us, we were like a guinea pig for the founder fellowship. So we were like a worse deal. I mean, I don't know, like they give so much more money now. But yeah, and then we were like the first, it was us and like 2 other companies at the time.
Cool.
And now they've turned it into more of like a real program.
So backing up a little bit, what is it like to work with your brother as your co-founder? I think it's a question from Reid at CRV.
Reid at CRV.
He's got some other ones that's strategically inserted in here.
I'm excited. I mean, what I like to say is like we have 30 years of experience arguing with each other and, coming out on the other end. I think early on that was actually probably really helpful. Because there were a lot of like fierce debates, and it's like good to, especially while you're finding PMF, like be able to just fiercely debate and know at the end of it, you're still going to be working on this thing together. More recently, I think the most helpful thing is like the trust that's just baked in, because as the company grows and there's just so much to do, we found that there's like a lot less time for us to actually like talk to each other. And this is actually a mistake new employees make. They'll come in thinking like, oh, like the two brothers are on the same wavelength 100% of the time. And really it's like, no, he's got his part, I got my part. And it kind of just goes. And then we sync up and like periodically to make sure we're still on the same page. But having that, just blind trust that like he's not going to mess it up, and he has that trust in me, like it's fantastic, right? There's never like a question there.
What was the living situation like?
The living situation, yes, it was. So, he lived in Denver, I lived in Boston, and we get into this South Park Commons thing that they're doing. It doesn't even have a name yet.
In San Francisco.
And we had just flown in for like 2 weeks. We're staying on whatever hotel price lines. They do these deals, like express deals, where they don't tell you what hotel you're going to get. They just tell you the price. So we did that, stayed in the cheapest hotel. We're out here for 2 weeks, do a ton of pitches. We get into South Park Commons. I fly to Denver, and then we drive his car out, and we're staying. Basically, my friend from college, she had just bought a house and she had an empty basement. And so we're like in the basement paying $400 a month, which is like a great deal in San Francisco.
Yeah, splitting it 2 ways, right?
Yeah. And we said, we're going to be here for 8 weeks, which is what South Park Commons said. This is like an 8-week program. It's going to be roughly like Y Combinator.
8 weeks, you'll find PMF off to the races.
Off to the races, you go, you'll raise the seed. It'll be great. And we get there and, like we're paying $400 a month, like 6 weeks in, we don't feel like we're leaving South Park Commons anytime soon.
Yeah.
She's kind of picking up on it. And she's like, I think I'm going to start increasing your rent, like $100 a month. But anyway, so we end up staying there for a full year, like all the way through COVID. And we're in South Park Commons like every day. Basically open to close. And yeah, Kelly Klein, she's not an investor, but she's on our cap table.
So what does that mean? You just gave her some shares?
Oh no, so she did invest. That's actually another funny story. I asked her for an introduction to someone that is an investor. Like she does a lot of angel investments. And she's like, I should just say the name. It was Maya Bittner, who she's on Twitter. And she's at like Chime now. And I was like, oh, like, because Clerk has this fintech angle. We're going to do billing. She does fintech angel investments. Yeah. Kelly and Maya are friends. And I know that because I met Maya at like some party she threw. And we were looking for angel investors. So I'm like, hey, Kelly, could you like intro me to Maya? And she's like, why? I was like, I'm looking for investors. She's like, I want to invest. If I invested in all of my friends' Series A companies, like I'd be rich right now. And so she never even made the intro. Maya doesn't know this story, so this will be a fun. And she swooped up the last $25,000 we had in that round. But yeah, it's crazy to think like all of the little things that people did. Like Dara, I mentioned, he introduced us to Onurag. So he introduced me to John Collison back in 2011. Then in 2019, he introduced me to Onurag, who is in South Park Commons, who introduced us to South Park Commons. And like, there's so many little things. Like Kelly kept us going for an extra 3 months just with the low rent.
Is there a way that you have sort of like opened up more serendipity there, or like leveraged getting introduced to people? Like, how should I think about that if I'm early in this and I'm like, oh, I want to be introduced to angel investors and people that will help me?
I just try to say yes to everything, like with friends at least. Is yeah, I don't know if if a friend is doing something, I always try to go, and I always end up meeting more people. And it's really easy to be too tired to do it, but I just always try to go, and it's ended up. I just met some amazing people over the years, and yeah, honestly, I think it's just like I always try to say yes. If someone invited me, like I should try to go.
Some guy invites you on his podcast.
There you
yes.
go.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah. So you mentioned that this period kind of dragged out. You lived in the basement for a year.
Yeah.
What was it like trying to get people to start using the product? How did that go?
This is why we stayed there for a year. It was amazing. South Park Commons, they have this program of like, they have once a month new people start, and they have like a whole little onboarding thing. And it's not just the South Park Commons has a community in addition to the fund. And so the community, it's all just like these technologists that are normally like, oh, I was an early employee at XYZ thing. It grew. And I'm like trying to decide what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go hang out at South Park Commons. Those people are amazing, like demo tester people. And so every time they'd come in, we'd be like, charging through the door after they're onboarding and be like, hey, can you try out this thing?
It's unofficial onboarding is also try Clerk.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And basically we'd do it, and every time they'd hate it. But we'd get some nugget of like, okay, this is what we have to do for the next batch of people. Like, we want this improvement done. And at the end of the year, first of all, we were running out of money, but we started as a Ruby gem. And by the end of the year, we had like kind of honed in on, okay, React has something here that has more legs than we ever saw on this other thing. We know that we needed the UIs. And so like a lot of the plan had started to formulate.
So then what was the thing that really switched with people? Like, was there a certain feature or something that kind of got you there, or a decision that you made?
I think it was a little bit of the persona.
Just nailing the customer and the user persona.
So I think like React developers are like front-end developers, and they're used to like, oh, I need to build a sign-in page. I kind of have to go ask my backend team to stand up these endpoints for me so that I can do it. And so the way they see Clerk is more like Clerk is their backend team, unless, right? Like, they don't care about the implementation details beyond that. And we get tripped up a lot with like the average Ruby developer or Python developer, so on, because they'd be like they'd watch the demo and they'd be like, oh, that was really cool. That was really fast. And then they start like overthinking, like, where is my data though? Like, I never connected this to a database, and like, it sounds scarier than it is. Like, we have APIs to access all this stuff and so on. But with the React audience, they were just like, oh, wow, you're just helping me move a lot faster. This is great.
So basically you just would you say part of it is just getting narrower and focusing?
Yeah. I think that is really a big thread, because we started very agnostic, and we thought that was, the right thing to do.
Yeah, because everyone could use it.
Everyone wants an agnostic solution. And sort of the more we honed in on, okay, not just all developers, but React developers really like this. And then we did another phase, not before the first seed round, but later on, of not just React, let's go all in on Next.js and really try to have an amazing SDK for that one framework. And now we have all of the different React frameworks and other front-end frameworks and so on.
Yes, you never really gave up on the big vision, but you really just figured out like, okay, there's like one language and this one type of developer. Then you add another.
Yeah.
And if you're using Python, can you use it now?
So you can.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Start super narrow and then go a little bit more broad.
And I think it was almost more like a change in like who we sold to with the React emphasis, because so many React apps have a Python backend or Ruby backend and so on, but it was still easier for us to get in the door through the React developer.
So you mentioned a couple times the fundraising, and that was initially how we connected on this. Was posted a clip from the podcast from Villy talking about category ventures, and we were talking about seed extensions.
Yes.
His initial thinking was, oh, you're most likely to get a seed extension from a smaller fund.
Yeah.
You end up raising a seed extension from A16Z. They're
yes.
like the biggest fund out there, really, at the end of the day. So you kind of hit on a little bit of the fundraising with South Park. Like, what's been the fundraising journey? Because it has not been the most straightforward, and like you read a blog post about how this goes.
How much time do we have?
Yeah. So I'm curious. It's just like you like some different things you've made work on the fundraising side.
Yeah. It's been a slog most steps of the way. I think. So we started with South Park Commons, and
so what was their deal that they did?
I think it was like 200,000 for 5%. Was the initial deal we were on,
and it was like it's kind of this fellowship. We'll coach you. You'll learn how to make a company, build a product, and you'll go and raise the seed round.
Exactly.
Okay,
and we'll do it in 8 short weeks.
It sounds like a great pitch.
My wife, by the way, was still in Boston. She loves to talk about how 8 weeks turned into 8 months. And
oh man!
Then he asked me to move out here. All vaguely happened. She moved out for COVID. And anyway, yeah. So we did that, and yeah, I was saying like at the end of a year, we had switched from a Ruby gem to React, and the product was better. It was more well-defined, right? So at South Park Commons, we got lucky that we pitched to Aditya, and Aditya was like, I worked on accounts.php at Facebook. I absolutely hated it. Like, I would love for someone to take over this whole thing. And that was kind of it. And then it's super early. And that was kind of like, we had a proof of concept. He was like, okay, this is enough. Like, let's try this out.
So he was like prime user of the product, and you just like happened to pitch somebody who was like down the fairway. Would have been a customer, totally got the pain point.
Which it turns out it's very hard to know before you pitch someone. If like, I had no idea Aditya had worked on accounts.php at Facebook.
You might have tailored the pitch differently if you knew that he had countered the problem.
I mean, we should come back to that.
Okay.
I don't think I would have.
Oh, okay.
I think it was tailored to him, and it just wasn't tailored to anyone else. Right. And that's why South Park Commons did it and no one else did. But so, a year later, we're doing the first seed, and we figured out this React thing, but we're not launched. But
were people using it?
No.
Okay. That's kind of scary as an investor. It's like, spent a year, no one's using it yet.
Very reasonably so, very scary. I forget. We might have had like one friend's company from New Jersey that like we built the whole app for him, and we put our app in it. Our auth in it too, right?
Okay, like that's a hack to get customers.
I mean,
build their entire
my brother worked at an app agency before this. What else is he good for now?
Yeah. So you had like less than 6 months of runway at this point, right?
No, it was more like 2 months of runway. Like this is, but it's just the two of us. So it's,
you could have in theory had indefinite because you could have just,
in a sense, yeah. And so we're pitching them, and we basically, this round was, we probably talked to 40 people. Like, it's not resonating with anyone. And that was like, it was like 4 weeks of this, like just getting nowhere, looking to do anything we can. We applied to YC. We didn't get into YC.
What was like the hack? I know you kind of had like this trick that like it made it start to work.
So Ruchi, the other SPC partner besides Titya, came out with this nugget of like you mentioned during this that like some associates liked you, but like the partners, like they couldn't get it over the line with the partner.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you email all those associates and say, hey, is there one fund that you'd recommend we talk to? And she was very adamant about like one fund. Don't ask for any fund. Just like, what is the one best fund you think we should talk to that might do this?
Yeah.
And an associate from Index came back and said, I know this fund S28 that is looking for something like this. I'll make an intro to Vic, and made the intro. We show up, And it was basically the same situation as SBC in the sense that they're engineers, they understand what we're talking about. They have a bunch of portfolio companies that are experiencing the auth problem. Like they all hate it and it's a little undefined. They were thinking about incubating something, but they were like, hey, you showed up on our lap. We might as well do
We might as well invest. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you want to keep working on it. Like, let's go. That was the first seed. We still haven't launched.
Yeah. You did end up getting a pretty strategic angel that helped you out that came in.
So it wasn't in that round. It was they did S28 ended up doing a follow-on round.
Okay. I think you kind of officially launched a couple months later, right?
A couple months to a year.
Okay.
It was a long journey.
Okay. Hey, that's totally fair.
Well, so at this point, the proof of concept was resonating with people, right?
Yep.
So if you were an engineer, you saw it, and you're like, "Oh, that's cool! Like that'll be great."
Was
it was totally hacked together. It wasn't production ready, so we spent a ton of time making it production ready.
Okay, so I was going to ask: was there a reason that you didn't launch? It was like you were just trying to make the product good enough.
I think there's two sides of the product. One is like, do we get the DX right? And then the other is, are we actually comfortable launching this thing? Because we are still a security reliability company. Like your auth can't go down.
Yeah, probably you can generate no revenue. People can't use your product either.
Yeah, and so in this phase of just like looking for what is the right product, we had no regard for making it production ready. And so really the way we were framing that for a seed round was we have this piece of concept, it's resonating with people. We have to now make it work and launch the thing and rebuild. It was like a big rebuild of the back end. And it's like you almost don't even want to call it a rebuild because the back end was just like sort of non-existent.
It wasn't a rebuild. It was a build.
Like mocked together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we built the thing and then we launched it Feb 21. And that launch on Hacker News went really well.
Like people were just like, your audience is developers on Hacker News. It's people like, oh, I hate this problem. I hate creating this stuff.
Yeah. It took off and, the headline was all of user management, not just authentication. And that resonated with people. The components resonated with people. And we got a nice little spike of signups. And then it did the classic, like, straight into the valley. But
you took advantage of the spike, right?
Yeah, we took advantage of the spike. I mean, S28 saw the spike, and I guess they've probably done this somewhat strategically. Initially, they made a smaller bet, and then they doubled down on their bet and gave us what they thought was enough capital to get us to the A. Yes, and in that round, they actually said, like, we're not the most networked investor in the world. We think we should pull in John Komkov from Fathom, and he's going to help us get the A done whenever time is. And I'm like,
whatever.
I don't care at all, right? Like fundraising has not been our prowess, and meanwhile, we have competitors that are like literally raising $100 million, like with seemingly no effort. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So anyway, someone's throwing money at us. Like, we'll take the deal. You want us to bring in Komkov? Like, absolutely no problem.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed the call with Komkov, but there was no way I was saying no, right?
Yeah. This is probably the easiest raise you'd had at this point, right? Where people 100%. Are just like, probably biggest dollar amount with like least friction, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was preempted. And so like we didn't know it was coming, and they gave us like 2 weeks to decide on it.
Yeah, that's incredible. You go from like, like just convincing somebody to say yes to like, we want to give you more.
Yeah.
Like, here you go. Here's
absolutely.
Just sign this thing. Yeah. We'll send you a couple $1 million.
And so we did that. And then the company kind of progressed from this spike on Hacker News launch day into this valley of, we're getting new signups every week. We're able to talk to those customers and like see their friction points and so on, but there's still like issues with the product. It's not just going.
So what kind of decisions and product changes did you make?
So I'd say if I were to characterize the full product period between when we launched and like when it really started growing, it was kind of this transition from React agnostic to like Next.js specific in a sense. So like the extra tuning we did to make it really great for Next.js, I think pulled, we're talking like 12 minutes down to 6 minutes in terms of integration time. It's a big deal.
Why is that a big deal?
It's half the time.
Okay, fair. Did you see conversion rates go up when you?
That's generally the only like trick we have in the book. Is like look at your onboarding. How many steps is it? And like, how can you get rid of a step? And that's if I were to characterize like all of Clerk's lifetime, like that's what we've been doing is just how do we take steps away? And yeah, I should say we pitched. We're just naming everyone. We pitched Sequoia early on in the seed, and I actually really liked the feedback they gave. So this was the S28 round. That was really hard. So they were like one of the 40. And, they came back and said, like Stripe took this many week process and turned it into hours. And Twilio did the same thing, right? Many week process turned it into hours. And like, we just don't know if taking hours, which is what kind of Auth was at, taking it down to minutes, if people are really going to care. And that was kind of what they relayed when they passed. And we didn't know either. And I really appreciated that feedback because it was like, well, that's like a real, like you thought about it, right? Like that's real feedback.
A lot of people just don't even give you feedback and you don't hear from them ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we've always had this belief that like, if we just take the onboarding steps and we just try to remove steps one by one, like eventually we'll get faster than open source. We'll get faster. Like we'll just be the fastest way to set things up. And developers are just like ruthless about how efficient can I be. And so, yeah, I think that process of being, for React to for Next.js just made the onboarding that much easier. And that's ultimately where things started to pull.
So making it easier to use the product, reducing the friction, speeding onboarding was the thing that really started to tick up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned.
Unfortunately, it didn't happen before we needed to raise again.
Okay. So this is probably about a year process of continuing to just keep making it better.
We launched Feb 21 and then we were down to like 6 months runway it was fall of 22.
And you were going to raise your third extension? Or you thought you were going to raise a Series A?
We were going to raise an A, of course.
Because it was kind of working, sort of, right?
It was like, I would say it wasn't, like we knew that wasn't going to be an easy round, right? Because I always think of Paul Graham's like Startup Equals Growth essay. And they're like, oh, like it's a good YC company if they're hitting 7% growth week over week. And we hadn't done that at the time when we were down this like 6 months of runway. And so we knew it wasn't going great. But I think what was interesting was that we had customers that loved us. We were only growing like 3% week over week. We were under $100,000 of ARR. But we were launched, right? And so we go to do this other round. And like, honestly, so I guess like, yeah, laying it out, like we had done that really bad seed and it was like 4 weeks followed by like pure desperation. And so this time we were like, we know what we're doing. So we're going to schedule it all in 2 weeks. And so we like a week ahead of time, we email all the VCs, like we want to meet in these 2 weeks.
That's what all the blog posts will tell you to do when they give you advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Box it all in.
And so we do that and most fit neatly into these 2 weeks. And Comcov, the same guy that we strategically brought in, he's like, I know a guy at Andreessen. I'll get that meeting set up. And they set it up for 3 weeks. And so we're just like, all right, at this point, Andreessen had already passed too in the prior round. Like, it's Andreessen, right? Like, how are you going to get Andreessen? It's like nothing's working really. 3% growth. Like, no way.
They're not going to invest,
do it.
but like it's good to just catch up with that
So
one.
they're like off the table anyway, but we should go talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we do this 2 weeks and I'm miserable. It's like no one's there. We get into the third week. I think we have 1 or 2 follow-up meetings, but not feeling very good about it. And we go into this Andreessen meeting that Friday morning. And like the best way to describe it is like, for me as a founder, at least, like I had done so many demos of Clerk. Like customers come in, they want to see a demo. Like, okay, I'll do the demo with you. And I know exactly when people react and like when they get excited. I know what step and so on. And so I'm like, for this pitch, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to demo Clerk and see if they like it. And VC meeting after VC meeting, just no reactions. Like all the hit points, just like there's nothing there. And I do it with Andreessen, and Martine stops me at like the first hit point. He's like, "Holy shit!" And it's just like
you're like, "Wow, this is great."
Like that's thank you.
Yeah.
The meeting keeps going on, and at some point in that meeting, I say like the component is the new API, and he latches onto that. He's like, "That's brilliant! Like React is taking off, yada yada." He ends up tweeting it out after the meeting.
Yeah, you sent me that tweet. I actually liked it. I'm wondering if it will show up in his notifications that I like this tweet.
That was my first. At this point, you're just doubting everything. So that was my first indication. Like, maybe he's actually going to do it.
Yeah, that's gotta be incredible. Just feedback of like he got excited about the one thing that actually most customers get excited about, and then he like tweeted about it.
Tweeted out a big part of the pitch. Yeah. And so they end up working through the weekend. I do the partner pitch on Monday, and we get like the verbal yes. And I don't know how deep we're diving here.
We can go as deep as you want. I mean, it seems like just based on everything you've said, that probably felt incredible at that point of like, holy shit. Like
it did.
After 3 years, it sounds like, or maybe it's more than that of going through this, somebody finally gets it.
Yeah. And I think like, Aditya got it and S28 got it, but it wasn't launched yet. Right. And so to see an investor at, a huge fund get it
with not super exciting spreadsheet math there yet. Right.
Yeah.
Like only 3% weekly growth.
Yeah.
You're not going to die, but you're not going to usually get A16Z to invest at that point.
Exactly. And so we get to a verbal yes, but they're just like, this isn't an A. You don't even have $100,000 in ARR.
I actually have a portfolio company that I'm like a very similar setup where A16Z did an extension with like, it wasn't an A, but they were excited and been going well since then. Yeah. Actually, probably pretty similar path where like it started to do well afterwards.
So yeah, it's hard for me to be upset at big funds for not doing extensions.
Yeah. And it was technically a down round, right?
Yeah. So
how did this play out?
This is the nitty gritty of it.
So like you hear about like a Series C or Series D down round, but like a not even an A yet down round. That's harder for a lot of people to swallow. How did you do? How did you pull that off?
Oh man, it was. We get the verbal yes, meaning like Andreessen wants to invest, but then they're like, you've done 2 seeds already. Like this cap table probably like. They said, we don't think this cap table is like set up for you to turn this into a big business. And so at the end of this round, we want the cap table to like still look like a regular seed company so that when you go to do an A, because that was the other thing they said, like, it's not an A, it needs to be a seed. So when you go do an A, it's like you're not underwater already in terms of dilution and so on. And so it was not a down round for employees and founders for common stock. The way they executed it was, it's called like a recapitalization. So they basically like redraw the whole cap table. All of our existing investors got basically over diluted, and then the founders and common stock got under diluted.
Okay.
So that's how we pulled it off. It's way easier said than done, right? Like existing investors don't like the extra dilution.
Yeah. So what did you say, or how did you present it?
I mean, so at this point, the investor that has to make the call on whether or not to do it is S28, because the way our docs are written up, it's not like you need approval from every check. You need approval from the majority of the preferred. And in this case, it was like all S28. I think maybe we needed SPC's approval too, but like S28 was clearly the main driver here. And it was not, I mean, it's not like fun, right? Like as a founder, you're, first of all, like immensely thankful for all of the investment you've gotten that's taken you to this point of like getting Andreessen funding and like really any funding, right? Like anything that lets you continue, you're just like immensely thankful for anything that's gotten you there. And so to have to like pick up the phone and be like, they want to do this thing, it's not particularly fun. And I don't think it was received particularly unexpectedly. It's not like I'm getting yelled at on the phone, but it's just like, well, this sucks. And we all kind of have to acknowledge that. But it ended up being, and this is why it's funny, like Comcov was part of this that introduced us to A16Z. Like Comcov has like ended up mediating, in a sense, the down round for S28 while bringing in Andreessen. And yeah, I mean, I think Comcov is if you ever have a chance to meet him, like absolutely do. He's like the most level-headed, rational person ever. It's just like this was the last meeting. We did our 2 weeks of meetings. Everyone said no. Like there is nothing else on the table. Like maybe we could take this and parlay it into finding money from someone else. But
Of like, hey, A6EZ wanted to invest. But
do you really want to do that, or do you want to take the money from the person who has conviction? It's just like very rational. Yes, this is the best thing, but it still sucks. Like,
and he was part of the down round too. He like negotiated his own down round.
He negotiated his own down round. And so that sucked, but we signed it, and that was exciting.
Yeah.
I know everyone talks about like founder roller coasters. Like this week was the most insane week, and there was something going on. I think it was like S28 was like in the Maldives or something, like something ridiculous.
That's a classic VC,
we're just
like vacation.
Well, he's Indian. It's like his,
Okay, slightly, because it's in the Indian Ocean, right?
It wasn't pure classic VC. I'm gonna go to the Maldives.
At least it was next to
also
India.
Shvet is like, he's not the Maldives guy. Like, hey, he's gonna watch this and be like, what? Yeah,
okay.
No, he's not it at all. It might have been like right after he got married. Like it was like totally
okay.
Yeah,
slightly more fair.
But anyway,
we'll give him more credit.
We're dealing with like a time shift, a massive time shift at the same time, and it was just nightmarish, but exciting at the same time. And that was a week of founderdom.
Yeah,
for you.
Well, I know there was something that you mentioned. You changed the pitch based on feedback from S28. I think it was after you launched on Hacker News, like the way you talked about the company to investors, you kind of completely changed, which I think maybe that helped with A16Z. But what was that lesson that you learned?
So I think, early on, we actually ended up with a rule in fundraising that Colin's not allowed to talk about billing in pitch calls. This is a rule from Braden, because he's like, everything sounds so normal, insane, like Auth0, people don't like Auth0, like there's room for a new entrant here. And then you go and you talk about how you're going to take over billing, and you just sound completely unhinged. Like you're not allowed to talk about billing anymore. And that happened in the round with S28, that first slog of a round. And like looking back now, I think that was the wrong move. I think it felt right? It felt like the easier thing to pitch. But when we went and we did the Andreessen round, like we were no holds barred. Like we're doing the pitch. Like this is the thing. We're starting with Auth. We have the second act into all these things, kind of the same way we did it with it for SPC. And I think like that behavior of like, I'm going to try to do what the VCs want instead of, I'm going to like, I have a conviction around how this business is going to work. And I'm going to pitch this in a way that like deliberately scares away the people that don't get it. It's a big switch flick there, but I think it pays off. Like, I think, Martin in the Andreessen pitch, like he was excited about all of it. He wasn't just excited about Auth. He was excited about this, platform of components that help in more verticals than just Auth. And ultimately, like, you're just better off having people on your board that are aligned with the full thing, because otherwise you end up hating your board. You don't want that. Like, you don't want that back pressure. Like, you want people that are egging you on to go do more and more and more. And I learned that from S28 as part of the extension round, because basically, like, it was preempted. I wasn't thinking about them giving us more money at all. Like, it wasn't on my radar of things that they would ever do. And so at this point, like, I know what I had pitched them, but whenever I'm doing check-in calls with them, like, I'm always talking about like, oh, one day we're going to do this thing with billing. It's going to be amazing. And when they did the extension, he called me up and he said, I want you to know, like, I'm doing this not because like I think Auth is going to be a massive business. I'm doing this because you won't shut up about billing. And it was such a like empowering moment of like first of all, like, thank you for like seeing that, right? Like, I love that you see that, but also
that's the vision that you saw.
Yeah. But I also just like, it makes me so much more excited to talk to him and strategize with him about how we're going to do that one day. And that just makes for like a much more enjoyable working relationship for me, at least. And so, now every investor knows, and, we talk in board meetings about like this is what we're doing for the grand plan. And so I don't know, it's just like, it helps. While it's very tempting to do the thing that you think will like get them to write the check, you're probably better off pitching it the way you actually want to see it go, and then just play a numbers game. And, I can't promise that like Andreessen's going to be the one number that like happens to like it. Like, that's just a weird thing that happened for Clerk, but it doesn't matter who the check comes from. Like, what really matters is the partner alignment. And that's, when founders ask me for fundraising advice, that's consistently the thing I say. And I think like the people who get multiple checks, they constantly get caught up on this, like, what's the best brand and what's the valuation and so on. And in the early stages, it's like, none of this matters. Like, who's the partner that gets it the most? And like, that's the one you want to work with. And I think this is part of the, the Villy thing too, of like, oh, the multi-stage funds don't write seed extensions and the smaller funds do. Who cares? Like, it's just partner alignment. That's the thing that matters most.
Yeah.
And, the partner that's truly aligned with you is going to be the one that like grows the pie with you in the way you want to grow the pie.
I mean, maybe a pushback on the doesn't matter about valuation, dilution, brand, whatever. Let's say you have an investor that no one's heard of before, and you take a really low valuation, bad deal. You sell too much of the company. To A16Z's point about like, we need to kind of fix this cap table a little bit. You do want to think about those things too, though, don't you? Of like what if you like shouldn't you care about those? Or
I honestly don't know.
It sounds like, well, like maybe the underlying truth is like survive. Like, that's really what matters more than anything else.
But I think there's this element of like, I guess there's probably some bounds here. Like the partner that's aligned needs to still be playing realistic, right?
Yeah.
But I think the 20% round at anywhere from 15 to 50 million valuation is realistic easily. What do I see? What's like the YC default seed these days? I think
It's like
25.
a million at 20 or 25. Yeah. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. If it's 15 or less, the general thinking is like, it's like YC doesn't really know how to think about this company. There's no interest. Like just talk to people and like just a low evaluation if possible, like get the deal done.
Yeah. So there's these like rough standards that exist, and you think of YC at the high end where people are, but like no matter what, like these early rounds, they tend to be 20%.
Yeah.
Like 15, 20%, 25% sometimes. Like, so you need to make sure that they're playing like within those bounds. But beyond that, I just really think far and away partner alignment is like the single most important thing, and everything else is second, third, fourth, fifth.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it too is just like the business model of those funds is they need to try to get 15 to 20% ownership. So like that's why it's kind of the rule. It's like it's really like the VCs almost like putting it on the founders. Like if you can only sell 10% of the company, that's great.
Yeah.
Like if you can retain more ownership, that's good.
Yeah. But on the founder side, it's just like don't. My advice is like don't twist yourself into knots. Just like which partner do you like the best? Like,
yeah,
and then just grow the thing.
Yeah, I know we just spent half an hour talking about like how much fundraising sucked, but it sounds like it's starting to get better. Like you launch, been more mature. I think you mentioned you actually hit the YC 7% a week growth shortly after.
So, so we caught it in January. Technically, another round happened before we caught it, and I like.
And then you were proper Series A a couple of months later, right?
No, it's weirder than that. So Andreessen did the round in, I want to say it was like September it closed, or August, something like that. And at this point, we're still at 3% growth. And then I get an email from Karan Mahandru at Madrona, I think newly at Madrona. And my first instinct is like, what is Madrona doing emailing me? They're a Pacific Northwest fund. And for the audience who probably doesn't know this, there's this fund called Madrona. They were based in Seattle, and their thing forever was like, we do only Pacific Northwest investments.
Yeah.
Apparently, they had just hired this guy in San Francisco, Karan, to start investing out of San Francisco. I had no idea. So, like in our 40 pitch slog, for all I know, Karan would have done it and scheduled in those first 2 weeks and so on. But I didn't even reach out. And so he emails us before the Andreessen round is announced and says, like, he was on Auth0's board. So that's a big part of this. He'd basically like talked to his like Auth0 confidants and said, which one's going to win next? And apparently they like unanimously said Clerk.
Wow.
So he was super jazzed, and this was, company still growing lightly. But again, we have this element of like people who get it. And so if you're really looking at Clerk and its customers at this point, like the customers are all happy, and there's just like not a lot of them yet.
Yeah. There's probably like product people can really tell, like a customer of the product who's like seen the landscape, like, oh, this is the best one. Like that one's going to win.
Yeah. And so, Karan comes in and he does an A like November. And so still hadn't grown yet. So we managed, after this like absolutely brutal round with a recap, like 2 months later, this extra check walks in. And it's the same situation as the S28 extension of like, yeah, of course we'll take them. money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did you need to fundraise though? Like, why did you take the money?
I definitely not. But like money has never been easy for Clerk to come by. And so,
So you were just like, someone wants to give us money, we should take it because we don't know when this will happen again.
yes. And,
Okay.
you know, there's also this element of like, we have this grand plan. We know we don't have enough money to get through the grand plan. We don't have enough money to even build billing, right? The first step of the grand plan. And so we'll definitely take the extra capital. And yeah, so that was like a couple meeting, didn't talk to anyone else, just like open and shut, let's do it. And then comes January, and that was the first time we finally broke this 7% like week over week thing.
How did that feel? Like, just
That was amazing.
yeah.
That was actually like fundraising is exciting, but like this is just 10 times more exciting.
Because just people were finally using it, and you was like, when you go from 3% a week to 4 to 5, it's like you're growing faster every week.
Yeah.
As you get bigger, you're growing faster.
It's and that was just, you know, you start to feel it and people start to feel it internally. And up until that point, you can imagine just the degree of doubt about, is this decision right? Is that decision right? And so on. And
Yeah.
once the market really starts pulling it, it's like, okay, we've got something going right. And so that was January 23. Luckily had the A in the bank. It's also the month we launched or we announced the Andreessen round, even though the A was already done, but we just didn't tell anyone.
And then I think you had an interesting kind of situation with the next time you raised money. You kind of told me just like how you kind of negotiated that. So this is with Reid at CRV.
Reid at
for the Series B.
So yeah, Reid had, I think, always liked, at least like us as founders, like Braden and I. My take, at least, like he didn't mind the grand pitch. He was just like, it's just like the market's not taking it yet. Like, how am I going to do a round right now? And once we started hitting those 7% numbers, and I think what helped Reid a lot was like what I said earlier, a lot of what felt like it was ended up driving it was this shift from React to Next.js. And so he invested in Vercel as well, and like was able to verify with Vercel people that like, oh, Clerk is actually doing something cool. And so, you know, that started in January. I think it was like May or June. I get a call from Reid that's like, hey, like this seems to be working now. I always liked you guys. Like, why don't we do it? And yeah, so the way that one went was he gave us terms. At this point, we had like just done the like A in quick succession with the seed. And so I called up Martine. I said, hey, we just got this term sheet, CRV. He's like, what's the price? And I forget what it was, but he's like, that's too low. We're going to beat it. And then you should just go shop it around. And he's like, if you shop it around and no one else does it, then like, we'll do it. We're happy to. Yep. But I think you could beat it, basically. And so
he gave you some ammo to work with.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it sounds like it wasn't quite, it didn't quite land right away, right?
What do you mean it didn't like?
Well, so then how did you convince CRV to like come in at a higher price? Yeah.
I mean, so I told him he got beat, and this is funny, right?
Okay.
Because here I am just like ranting about how it's all about partner, and we really liked Reid too, and so we were excited to have his term sheet, but yeah, there was a lot of this back pressure saying like you have to get the price up. From it was really both Madrona and Andreessen, but Andreessen actually like gave us this extra term sheet to go do it. And so I went out for beers with Reid, and Yeah, I kind of imagine it was scheduled for like an hour, but like we were there for like 3.5 hours just at the bar. And we don't even get a table at this restaurant. We're just like literally at the bar and just like talking you through. And there's not really anything to discuss. It's just like, I want you to hit this number. And he's just like, I don't want to hit that number. I don't think I can hit that number. It's like, all right, let's get another beer. And we just like did this for hours. And at some point, like several beers in, I'm just like, I need more like ammunition here. And so Guillermo from Brazil had like gotten in, I forget which round. I think it was one of the S28 rounds because S28 also invested in Brazil. And so I'm like DMing Guillermo, like, hey, I'm like at a bar with Reid. I need to get his price up. Like, can you help me? And he then texts Reid while I'm sitting next to him. It was like a whole comedy of a night. He was just buying food. And we just, I don't know, like we just hashed it out. I think that was a very fun night for me. I mean, not just because, the next day he calls me up and he's like, fine, let's just do it. Like, I like you guys. Like, this looks really stupid on paper, but we're going to do it. And it did, right? Like, revenue at this point, we're probably like the only Series B company. It was
in
like
2023.
It was like $300,000 of ARR. It was still embarrassingly low.
Yeah.
Just so early in the curve. And you're right. It's 2023. So Clerk, if you look at the timing of our investments, like ZERP was basically, it was like mid 21 to mid 22. And so like that second S28 extension we did, like maybe ZERP was starting then, but I don't know. We had to see we had an extension and like we were just going to take it, right? We didn't even think. We totally missed ZERP. Our competitors, like multiple competitors, raised over $50 million, one over $100 million. Basically, as far as we can tell, with the same revenue. But we missed the whole thing. And so you're right. 2023, to be doing a Series B at $300,000 of ARR, not totally normal, but for whatever reason, Reid's a saint, I guess, and did it. But now we're making a bunch of money, so like I think it's okay.
Yeah. So another question from Reid. He specifically asked me to say, what is your thoughts on investors that are in the arena and then investors that are watching from their mansion on the couch on TV?
Did he mention the Maldives in there?
No, he didn't.
It's a funny question because he clearly has someone in mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think like, we've only had like success with investors that like really get Clerk. And I think a lot of the partner alignment point comes down to like, do they understand the business in like a real material way? And like your ambition in a real material way. And like,
yeah,
for all I know, he's talking about Martine, and Martine is the one in a mansion somewhere on his couch. But like, he probably has a laptop there and he's like playing around with Clerk and 11 Labs and like all these things.
Yeah, that's from what I've heard about Martine. Like he's a lot of like doing demos and trying it.
I think he's had just an incredible track record. And I've had other investors ask me, like, what do you think Andreessen does? And my answer is like, I literally think Martine sits and codes all day with all the new tools and he picks the ones that he likes the most. Like, I think that's it. I think that's the alpha.
Yeah.
And it's not just Martine, his whole team, like Yoko and Jen, like they're just incredible at staying on top of all the technologies. And yeah, I think as infra investors, like I think that's their whole shtick.
Yeah. You might think that the A16Z is like in the mansion watching on TV, but yeah, to your point, is like they might actually be the ones in the arena.
Yeah.
Like using the products.
I agree.
Yeah. And to the company I mentioned earlier was like similar setup. It was very similar story where like just good product, not a lot of traction, starting to look better. Mm-hmm. They invested because that was the best tool. So it seems like that seems to be, I don't
I see I'm outing everyone during this, and you won't tell me this company name. I wonder who it is.
It's called Ingest. Have you met Tony?
I know Tony. Yeah, of course I know Tony. Yeah.
I don't know if you have a similar opinion on it, but it seems to be a good product.
It's a fantastic product.
Yeah.
Their onboarding experience, we copied at Clerk.
Oh, interesting.
So they did this thing before us of like, you can use Ingest before you have an Ingest account. And
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, and they did it from the start. And getting to that after you've launched is actually quite hard. And so it was like a big 6-month build for us to get there. But it did help us. We got an extra bit of acceleration immediately after launching it. So big fan of Tony, big fan of Ingest.
Nice. Yeah, I don't use the product. I just met him when he was at Uniform Teeth, and he just seemed like, I'm like, oh, this is an interesting idea, I guess, in theory, but you seem like a great founder. I'll give you money, help them raise the first round. I think introduced him to a 4 who led the pre-seed.
It's a lot like Clerk too, in the sense that they layer so much elegance on top of what is really thorny in terms of durability of queues and workflow function things. So
it seems like a similar, just unsexy stuff you don't really want to do. And if someone else solves it for you, that's great.
Let me just pull this off the shelf.
Yeah. So curious then, talking about just AI. I feel like it's a podcast. We're 2 tech bros. We have to talk about AI.
Yeah, of course.
But I feel like we can have a very opinionated, how has it changed authentication, or how do you think it's going to change authentication?
Yeah. So, there's 2 angles that are coming to mind right now, but I might think of a third as I go through this. But the first is is the stack changing or not? And I think, Next.js has been kind of the stack du jour for so long, but it's been Next.js with a human operating it. And I think, a lot of the agents are using Next.js still, but the human's not there. And then some agents are actually trying different stacks entirely. And so Clerk just needs to be on her toes from this perspective of who's going to be the one installing Clerk now, and are they good at doing it? And I think that exercise is actually very similar to what we did in 21, 22, of just how do we pull friction out for this user we're observing? It's just now it's not a human, it's an agent. So we look at the mistakes they make and we try to peel away those mistakes. But then there's the other side of just how is authentication itself changing? And there's, I think, I'll split this into 2 different ways that it feels plausible are going to happen. First is just agents signing in on behalf of a human. And this is what you see, MCP has a lot of buzz around it right now. It's this idea of can you give an agent, a partial set of permissions to act on behalf of a real human in an application, or a full set of permissions if you want to be a little more YOLO about it, I guess. I don't know how else to frame that.
Just do whatever you need to get done.
I think there's a lot of identity people, myself included, that are just we really don't want that to happen. We we think that we want the application builders to have more checks and balances on it, and we want the humans to be actually participating in granting certain privileges or not. And so that's what MCP is enabling. There's this other pillar that I think is really interesting that Dharmesh's agent.ai. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I haven't used it, but it's the thing. He's the HubSpot founder, CTO, builds a lot of products. He did this he just started building things and talking about them, AI products he was trying, basically.
What I love about agent.ai is it's framed as hire an agent to do a thing for you on some website. And when you hire an agent, that agent isn't necessarily impersonating you. They'll just do any task and they'll do it as the agent. And so there's this question of do websites need to start thinking about just like an agent entity operating independently instead of like an agent entity operating on behalf of a human. And I think like the simplest way I have this framed in my head is like, say you're like I don't know, like a task board project management software, and you have your team there, and you can kind of imagine like someone has their tasks at the end of the week to like clean up dead tasks and like reorganize things, pull things out of backlog and so on. You can kind of imagine like an agent doing that. And that agent doesn't need to be on behalf of a human. It can just be like the agent doing it.
Like as part of the software, like as part of just like, you don't need to like have somebody say, click a button and like do this. It's just, it notices that it needs to be done and it happens.
But it almost gets it gets attributed to the agent. Like you see the thing, it's all audited, but like the agent did it, and that's not a human, but like the agent did it, and you can reverse it and so on. And so there's this, it's like a subtle nuance on it, but you can actually imagine like software selling a seat to an agent, and that agent has its thing that it does, and maybe it's like an add-on agent. Like who knows how it's going to happen, but I think like agent.ai really pushes me down that track of like, oh, this would be an interesting way for agents to evolve. So those I guess are like the 3 ways I'm most thinking about AI right now.
Are you seeing any interesting data and Clerk usage with how agents interact with Clerk?
Yeah, they all try to steal free AI credits.
Like steal Clerk credits to like use the product cheaper?
Not Clerk credits, our customers' credits.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so we have like a ton of Gen AI tools, and they have these like free trials.
Oh, yep.
And you get your 10 credits, 100 credits, whatever it is. And the sophistication of the bots that try to sign up for these things and use the credits in mass has just gone way up. Like,
so the agents will be creating new accounts to get more free credits?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Do the human operators tell them to do that, or you think the agents are becoming self-aware?
I think the human operators tell you what to do.
Okay.
But
AGI not achieved.
Yes, sadly. But it's honestly been a massive thread at Clerk. Like we have 10% of our team just focused on understanding like when this is automation against your website versus when it's not, because most of our customers actually want to block abuse behavior. I think they also want to be able to identify non-abuse, like happy agents, and let them in. But so far, the biggest thread for us has actually been blocking abuse that's been more easily enabled since, agents and Browserbase and things like this.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
It's been fun.
So one thing, I want to ask you one more thing. You mentioned to me, you always try to have fun. And like,
yep.
I don't know if that's always what I hear from founders, but that's actually probably pretty important. Just like, why is that so important to you?
I think it's definitely too easily lost, right? Like, I think VC is very serious business, very like grand ambitions, and like a lot of money at stake, and with the number of zeros attached, that it's really hard to even grok. And so, yeah, I think for me though, like I can't lose sight of that, or I'll go crazy. And so, the silly nights at the bar, drink tons of beer with the VC, trying to convince them to raise the price.
Yeah.
Like, but even just, talking to customers and tweaking demos in fun ways, and just like so much of what Clerk does is just like try to bring a smile to people's face as they're building and on a part of the stack that's just traditionally such a slog. And yeah, I don't know. It's I've talked to so many founders that, they have this huge success story, like sell single digit billions, high 100 millions, whatever. And they're just like exhausted at the end. And so like one of my big things as a founder is like whenever I meet someone who's not that, I just like probe it. Like, what did you do? How did you make it work? And, like Patrick Collison sticks out to me. Dharmesh and Brian of HubSpot like stick out to me. There's just these like legends that have had such a long run. And, there's always this mention of like, just you gotta love the work and find a way to make it enjoyable. So I it's just something I keep in mind and try to keep in the team's mind as we go forward, because it's not, to me, Clerk isn't something with a finish line. Like we're building this and it's just gonna keep going. We're gonna hang billing off, we're gonna hang CRM off, we're just gonna like keep doing more things. And so like we have to craft this company in a way where like if something is getting us down, we have to find a way to get rid of it and move forward. And so yeah, it's just like part of it. And I think like longevity in this career just depends on it.
Yeah, that's fair. I actually do have one more question. So you mentioned like there are quite a few people in the space that are kind of building Auth. Like a lot of people it'll be like a feature of something else. Like they do like it's part of like Google Cloud or whatever, my Auth or something.
Yeah.
How have you thought about kind of like differentiating the product as like Auth only?
Mostly DX. Yeah, like our Clerk is really, really fantastically easy to use. And after you do the very few steps to get Clerk running, you look at it and you're just like, oh, wow, that's also really, really complete in a way that I never would have imagined it would be complete. Like you open the user profile and it's just like, there's more there than you expect. You go in the dashboard and from an administrative perspective, there's more there than you'd expect. And so a lot of it is just like, there's a little DX to delight people, but then
developer experience.
When the thing is actually like, people forget that DX isn't just like make it work as delightfully as possible, but like the part that ends up working needs to also just like knock people's socks off. And so I think we've just done that really well.
Just make a product that's just better and people choose it.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Build it and they will come, right? That'll be the...
Yeah. You can't say that, but I guess as like an outside observer, I could say like, it seems like that's what you're doing. So
a bit. Yeah. I mean, we are 100% like a product-led everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like taste that comes with it. And I think that's probably a big factor for us. But yeah, I don't know. I look at other products and it's like, ours is better.
Yeah.
I think it's better.
Yeah. I guess if you're still listening at this point in the conversation, you're thinking about trying it, you're thinking about like, I want to join an awesome mission, check out Clerk, sounds like.
Definitely. Yeah. Both of those things. Please try Clerk. And yeah, if this is exciting, and I really think it is, and you'd want to work on this grander vision, please do apply. I think it's clerk.com/careers.
And you tweet a lot too. Like you're pretty active on Twitter. Should people follow you? Is that a good way to stay?
I am Tweets by Colin. My name is a little dated at this point, but
X's posts by Colin.
We're going to stick with Tweets by Colin. It's
it's a throwback.
It's enshrined.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for listening. If you missed it, make sure to check out last week's episode with Philip Calzan on building Verkada from zero to almost $1 billion in revenue in 9 years. Tune in next week for the first ever returning guest, Dan Lawrence at ChainCard. If you like this episode, share with the founder who's raising their seed extension right now. If you don't want to miss a future episode, check the show notes for a link to my newsletter, The Split, and subscribe to get each episode plus a transcript emailed directly to your inbox every week. Thanks again for listening. See you in the next episode.